It is, man.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday and welcome to the DFS Pick 6 over on Rotogrinders. I'm Eric Crain, joined as I am every single Wednesday by two of the absolute best in the business. We got Rich Hribar. And Reeves, how we doing, buddy?
We're doing good, man. Had a couple technical difficulties there. The key is, we've been doing, you've done a bunch of these shows over the years, and we're at the mercy of some of this technology, and you don't realize until like it breaks or doesn't work like it's supposed to right at the exact moment. The key is to just not panic. Just like when we had Paris Campbell in week 2, we didn't panic. We came right back, went right back to Michael Gallup, and he made it rain for us.
As soon as Michael Gallup caught that touchdown, I'm like, oh, here we go. All right, I'm going to have to hear about this. I said that I was just ignoring him all year. He was my new Kelvin Benjamin, and now here we are. Also joining us, it's the birthday boy, John Daigle. What's up, Daigle? How we doing?
Not my birthday for another 2 months, but alas, we are here. And although we are not worried about Gallup anymore, we are still worried about Kenyon Drake because he did not make it rain Sunday. And unfortunately, even just say you run the perfect game stack and Derrick Henry and coming back with Dalvin Cook, it didn't matter in week 3 if you didn't have Tyler Lockett. So here we are today.
Yeah, but if you didn't have Lockett, and it was like you had 3 touchdowns in the first half. Like it wasn't even. You didn't even get the sweat. Like, okay, I just need to avoid this happening. Like, it was over early. If you didn't have Lockett, you just kind of threw your arms up and goes, okay, all right.
And they were free touchdowns, man. They were easy touchdowns. You would have caught 2 of those, Crain.
Well, I mean, I probably would have caught all 3. I mean, if I'm being honest. Like, I know you're saying that you could have caught 2. Like, I definitely could have finished off the DK Metcalf touchdown also that he dropped at the goal line. I mean, how good is Seattle, man? Seattle just crushes it. Well, NFL Week 4, this is a really strange week. Like, obviously, we've got this situation with Tennessee and Pittsburgh where, that game, it's going to be postponed likely until early next week for you season-long folks. I hope something gets resolved there. But then it almost feels like it's a late season slate because we've got 2 games that are going to be expected to be giant blowouts, both Baltimore and the Rams. They're both 13-point favorites over Washington and the Giants. We've got multiple games with giant totals. We're going to be talking about 3 of them, but I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 different games just on the main slate where the totals are 49 points or higher. So this is going to be one of those slates where you're going to have to be a little bit uncomfortable leaving some of these guys off your lineups. And I don't know about you, Daigle. Like these, I always I get these wrong. Like, no, I'm fading this guy. And then next thing he has 3 touchdowns in the first half. Hopefully that's not going to happen to us this week. But let's go ahead and dive into 3 other our favorite games. We're going to kick it off with Seattle at Miami. Seattle, they're 6.5-point favorites. It's a 53-point total. And Daigle, as we were just talking about, Seattle coming off, obviously, the absolutely massive game last week. They get another good match against Miami here. It's another game where as long as they keep airing it out, there's no reason not to like Russ. Are we going right back to this Seattle passing game, Daigle?
Do you like going right back to touchdowns? Because if so, then you can't say no to Russell Wilson. Now averaging 308 yards, nearly 5 touchdowns per game, with 14 total carries to boot, by the way, in these first 3 contests. Not only that, but we know already that Lockett and DK Metcalf are unstoppable. But for this week in particular, without Byron Jones, whenever he got lost in that Buffalo game, the rookie Noah I came in for the Dolphins. And since that time, he's allowed he's allowed the 9th most receiving yards in the entire league. And he's the one who would be matched up with DK Metcalf on the outside. So it's just a smash spot for all, assuming the Dolphins offense carries their end of the bargain. And I think we all have faith they can in this game, actually.
Yeah, I mean, Miami's going to be fun. Like, might be where we get some more cheaper exposure with the wide receivers here. But Daigle, I mean, this is just one of those games where points are going to be scored, man. If you want to stack it up, you're going to feel pretty good because as we've talked about numerous times on this show, you want to know where the ball is going to go. And that's what we have with both sides of this game.
Yeah, and I'll let Rich talk about Fitzpatrick because this week I think I know we have confidence in him. But last week, let's say, for instance, I played a lot of Carson Wentz, and what I didn't catch up to is exactly what you were talking about, is these high totals. It's just the new DFS and the new NFL of 4K minimum players on DraftKings and high totals that if you don't get the quarterback spot right from the beginning, like none of the cheapies so far anyways have helped you at all because they're not Josh Allen and Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott putting up absolutely insane numbers for guys who really weren't even drafted along with Lamar and Patrick Mahomes, who haven't really got there just yet. But I'll kick it to Rich because I know he has a lot to say about Ryan Fitzpatrick.
No, I mean, you guys kind of hit on just the lead into the season. It's been the highest scoring season through 3 weeks. Penalties are the lowest they've ever been. Holding penalties are down 60% from last year. They just aren't even calling it. Like, it just doesn't exist. Like, offense holding doesn't matter anymore. So I mean, we've seen kind of what we thought was going to lead into the season, kind of on all fronts. Outside of this being the first COVID scare, but we thought there would be a lot of soft tissue injuries. There has. We thought offenses would have an advantage to start the season. They have, and we've seen that the books finally are catching up. That's what you're starting to jam up these totals. When they really were slow to the draw these first couple weeks, because overs have been popping like crazy. And this is another game that looks like it's going to shoot out again. I mean, you got Seattle scored 35 or more points in every game. The Dolphins are always kind of game, and then Seattle's defense is awful, is horrendous. I mean, This is a team that bypassed, they went with the PFF angle. PFF did that study this offseason that showed that secondary play coverage was more important than pass rush. Well, if you can't cover or rush a passer, it seems to be a real problem because they didn't invest any pass rushers. They went all coverage heavy, and these guys haven't played up to par. I mean, Quentin Dunbar has been horrible to start the season. The only, Jamal Adams has been good, but he might not even play in this game. And Shaq Griffin has been terrible. Who played well last year. So, I mean, they haven't been able to cover anybody. They've allowed the most passing yards in NFL history through 3 games. They've allowed 3 300-yard passers. If they allow another one to Ryan Fitzpatrick, it'll tie the 2011 Patriots, a streak that Ryan Fitzpatrick was also a part of in throwing 300 yards in that streak as well. And the other thing with Ryan Fitzpatrick is we don't have to just take this matchup and elevate Ryan Fitzpatrick. We have to take the matchup first. We have to lead with the matchup. Ryan Fitzpatrick's already been a top 10 fantasy scorer in 2 of 3 games this season and in 9 of 14 games going back to last season. He has been a strong fantasy asset and a strong fantasy former. And we get him in a spot where he's just going to drop back and wing it the whole game. I mean, the quarterbacks against Seattle so far have 56, 47, and 62 dropbacks. And it's not even just that the production is volume induced. They are also 31st in yards per attempt allowed. They're 31st in yards per completion allowed, and they're 20th in completion percentage allowed. So not only are they going to have hyper efficiency, it's coming with tremendous volume. And that's why you're seeing these guys pop off for nearly 400-yard games. I mean, we can easily just play Russ. We can keep playing Russ if we want. And we can probably talk at the end of the show how no one's going to play Lamar Jackson for some reason this week either. When, he's probably going to the lowest ownership he's probably had since the beginning of last season, coming into this week as well. Ryan Fitzpatrick is on the board. But Fitzpatrick is a guy, if you're going to pay down, he's like the glowing, guy. And you don't even have to take the matchup at first. He's been playing well and runs into the spade.
Yeah, and just 5.4K over on DraftKings. I mean, that can help out a lot. And there are going to be some high-priced players that, as we'll get into, you're going to want this week. So I think Fitzy on the other side is fine. You pair him up with Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki. As the chat, I'll tell you what, the chat bringing it today. Jamal Adams misses Mike a little bit. Like Daigle, I think any of these Miami guys fine. And, of course, on the Seattle side, Lockett and Metcalf are both fine. When you look at this running situation, Chris Carson, we're not sure what's going to happen there. We're not playing Carlos Hyde, though, are we?
No. It does sound like Chris Carson actually may be okay to go.
Thank God.
And so for large entry, maybe sprinkle him in. It's a situation, though, I would personally avoid because even if Carson plays, or even let's say if Carson doesn't play, I don't think Carlos Hyde would be used as Chris Carson. I think they just use Travis Homer in the passing game or DJ Dallas if they want to get him involved. And then Carlos Hyde will get the more fruitful touches on the goal line. But on the other side of the ball, I do think Miami's running back situation has opened up a little bit if you want to get away from Ryan Fitzpatrick in tournaments. Because Gaskin last week against the Jaguars quietly got unleashed. 75% snap rate, a 25% target share. He handled 82% of their backfield touches, all season highs. And for the first time all year, actually outtouched Jordan Howard 4-3 inside the 10-yard line. So that is another way to confidently gain exposure to their offense if you do want to get away from the passing game, if you want to.
Gaskin looked good too. Like it was, I don't watch a lot of Dolphins games, but I did watch a fair amount of the Dolphins game last week, and he genuinely looked good, which I was not expecting. I'm personally going to go more toward the wide receivers here, but you bring up a good point with Gaskin because, like you said, he was catching some passes, and I have no problem there. Reeves, anybody else? Do you have a preference on the Miami side? Because Parker, Preston Williams, Gesicki, Gaskin, I mean, there are a few more mouths to feed than we typically like to attack on Miami. That said, you got to think against Seattle's defense, at least one or two of them is going to go off.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be, kind of the guys we thought. Remember last year we were just jamming in Devontae Parker to close last year, and we haven't had one of those games yet as he's kind of come back from the hamstring injury. But the past 2 weeks, he's ran a passer out on 90% of dropbacks and 100% of dropbacks. So he's getting there. He's getting to full health, and everyone's kind of highlighted the stats for Seattle. They've allowed 76 catches for 1,136 yards to opposing wide receivers. The next highest totals are 49 and 736. They just are getting flambéed by opposing wide receivers, and it's all wide receivers. In the slot, they're just getting decimated. I mean, 12 for 179, 15 for 232, 8 for 135. So if Isaiah Ford's going to be on the field, then, if they're going to play a lot more 11 personnel, he's even in play as like a cheap, stack in this game. Because 2 weeks ago when Miami had a season high 52 dropbacks, Isaiah Ford caught 7 for 76. So like at 3.7, like that's paying off too. And if you can get a touchdown with that, then that's really paying off at that price. Preston Williams has actually had his routes per dropback drop over the past 3 weeks. So he's kind of a guy you kind of need to get a touchdown for or hit one of those, high marks for. Still ran 84% a route on 84% of dropbacks last week. Gesicki, is one of these guys that he's a great tournament play because he's an all or nothing dude. Yeah. He scored in 6 of his past 9 games, but he's also been below 47 yards in 6 of those 9 games. And he's had 4 more catches in just 3 of those games. So he's kind of one of those, high volatile guys. He's got a huge catch radius. He's good for touchdowns. When they get in the paint, they throw to him. And he can have one of these games like he did a couple weeks ago where he has a high ceiling game, but he also has a lot of volatility to him, a lot more than people, tend to believe that he has. And you kind of seen that play out on Thursday night. But yeah, I mean, all those guys are kind of in play. It's easy to run it back with Seattle side. We know that. Gaskin did have the most impressive 3 yard per carry game, I guess, that I've seen Twitter be excited about in a long time. Definitely if you want to go there and try to catch some passes, you can shoot for that shot.
Yeah, and that's
even Greg Olsen is in play in this game too, because Miami's been kind of rough against tight ends. They've allowed they've only faced Ryan Izzo, they faced Dawson Knox, and they faced Tyler Eifert. But Greg Olsen's already had 2 top 12 weeks too already in 2 or 3 weeks. If Russ is just he's given so much production that anyone's in play.
And that the volatility you mentioned with Gesicki is why I will probably be underweight in tournaments, but also why I understand it could come back and bite me in the ass, because clearly after last year leading the league in slot rate at his position, he's doing it again at a higher rate this year too, 78% compared to 72% last year. And so if Seattle keeps getting banged up against slot wideouts, like that's what Gesicki is. He's not a tight end, he's a slot wideout. So it's somewhat concerning, but the boomer bust profile does make me get off of him in tournaments most likely.
You want to play him in tournaments though. That's what
you want to go overweight? I'm all ears.
He's not going to be that popular, is he?
I thought he would be. Maybe I just got my ownership percentage wrong on Wednesday.
I mean,
I could very well be wrong.
This is one of those things you're going to want to check ownership, because if he's popular, I have no problem.
I think people are into him.
People like Gesicki a whole lot. He's very sexy.
He is a good looking dude. That's a good point. I forgot about the second.
We love athletic tight ends, man. We can't help ourselves. Yeah. The fantasy football world, we can't help it.
Well, speaking of athletic tight ends, let's go talk about Kyle Rudolph and Jordan Aiken.
I was about to say, where are you going with this?
Houston. Houston 3.5 point favorites. Another giant total, 54.5 points. And we've got a matchup here where I kind of feel like Deshaun Watson is going to go overlooked this week. And I kind of feel like he's just absolutely going to smash this Minnesota defense. Reeves, are you on team Deshaun Watson with me?
Oh, yeah, this is a fun game. I mean, there's a chance, too, this could go under because both of their neutral pace stats are – we know that these teams will play slow if they can. But, this is a spot, too, where the defenses are so bad that, magic could still happen. And Deshaun Watson, he's had arguably the toughest start, of any quarterback. Maybe Daniel Jones, you could say, has had a tougher start. But, Deshaun Watson facing the Chiefs, and the narrative always is that the Chiefs kind of have a better offense than defense, and they do. But the Chiefs' defense is pretty good. It's been really good going back to last year as well in terms of limiting offensive production. They do give up rushing yards, but who cares about rushing yards? Whatever. And then he faces Baltimore and then Pittsburgh. with one of those games being in Pittsburgh on the road. So now he's coming against the Minnesota matchup that we thought maybe, at some point in the summer would be a hard matchup, but they've just been decimated on defense. They can't rush the passer without Danielle Hunter. They don't have Anthony Barr. The secondary has been going through a rotation of guys that have just been injured and young players at cornerback, and they've just been getting crushed. They have, like, from a passing points allowed perspective, they look fine, but it's just because Ryan Tannehill and Phillip Rivers only combined for 1 touchdown pass the past 2 weeks, but they're 24th in completion rate allowed. They're 30th in yards per attempt allowed. This is the spot for Deshaun Watson to, kind of do his thing. And it's a really good spot for his wide receivers to do their thing. These guys that have been, suppressed in price because they've been neutered by this, opening schedule. I mean, Will Fuller had the week 2 hamstring scare. He comes back and runs 97%, runs a route at 97% of the dropbacks this week. Brandon Cook's routes for dropback have been going up every single week. He's like basically just floating out there for like 5. You think he's like 5.3 on Fanduel and like dirt cheap on DK. Their stacking potential. Yeah, 45. I mean, he's just floating out there. And then whatever you want to do with David Johnson. I mean, I don't want to do anything with him, but he has, outside of Ezekiel Elliott, he's played the most snaps out of any other running back. He just hasn't had the touches. I mean, the concerning thing with David Johnson, why he's tough to play, is because he's not getting targeted. I mean, he's running so many routes, but he's got 7 catches on the year. Yeah. And we want our guys to catch the rock, man, out of the backfield, especially in DFS. These guys that don't catch passes are just tough to play. And it's what his best attribute should be, but they're not using him in that capacity. And he had the game script to get Pepper at targets all 3 weeks and hasn't gotten anything. So I think you look at just Watson and you look at Fuller and Cooks. And if you want to play Randall Cobb, I mean, I won't be super mad at you. I know you're probably a Cobb guy. I think he was in your Millie lineup, wasn't he, Crain?
No, he was, but he got taken out for a young guy named Devontae Adams. No, it was it? Hold on. No, I don't know. I don't remember. It was somebody.
Because that was the game. It was Falcons.
Yeah,
Packers.
it was Falcons Packers. Yeah, but I don't remember. I think it was going to be Cobb, and then it ended up being Adams. And that was before Beautiful. Adams was really Devontae Adams. So yeah. But it was no. I mean, you would think I would be a Cobb guy. I'm not, especially not this week anyways. I'm a Will Fuller guy this week. Like, I'm loading up on Will Fuller, and on the other side, Daigle, we always talk about this. You want to know where the ball's going to go. And typically with Minnesota, it's Dalvin, it's Adam Thielen. Obviously, Justin Jefferson had the giant game last week. I'm not so sure that's going to be repeatable. To me, this is a simple one. You play Watson, Fuller, run it back with Thielen or Dalvin, and move on. Am I making this too simple, Daigle?
Yeah, I think we like Jefferson, right? Because the Vikings schedule for redraft over the next 4 games, Texans, Seahawks, Falcons, and Packers, and the Lions if you want to go further. But for this one in particular, I mean, it just screams Dalvin, especially since Kirk Cousins quietly hasn't even attempted over 27 passes in all 3 games this season. Whereas Dalvin, we know what the Vikings want to do. They run the ball at the 4th highest rate within 1 score of their opponent, and then at the 5th highest rate when they've been trailing this year. And the Texans, that's where they're getting absolutely destroyed. Career day on an island game in week 1 against the Chiefs and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then the Ravens in week 2 actually averaged 6.9 yards per carry combined, despite none of them individually, since the 3-headed backfield going over 100 yards. And then we saw James Conner, despite not looking as explosive as since he came back from injury, still having another 100-yard touchdown day. And even Anthony McFarland broke through for a 20-yard run. So this is where they're getting exploited. That's where the Vikings want to do. So any Texan stack, I'm absolutely running it back with Dalvin Cook for sure.
Yeah, and it's just such a high total, on 2 teams where where the production is going to come from. I think this might be the single easiest stack on the whole slate. Dalvin, Will the Thrill Fuller, and just move on. I mean, what do you think about these other pieces on Minnesota, Hribar? Are you into Adam Thielen? Are you going to chase Justin Jefferson? I know you're not chasing Justin Jefferson. Why am I even asking? But what else are you doing on the Minnesota side, Reeves?
It's tough, man, because Houston hasn't been giving up a lot of protection because they're just getting run on every week. They haven't been really getting passed on because teams are just able to run for so many yards or pop. Like Daigle said, they've allowed 170, 212, and 210 yards from scrimmage to opposing backfields through 3 weeks. Cousins, when he does throw it, is actually throwing the kind of targets you want. He leads the NFL in depth of target. He's 2nd in yards per completion. Like Daigle said, though, you're getting 25, 26, 27 passes. That's all. He's last in the NFL in dropbacks of guys that have played 3 games. But Houston, like I said, they played Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Ben Roethlisberger. None have been top 12 scorers because they're just getting run all over, like we could probably expect Minnesota will be able to do here.
And Minnesota wants to run anyways.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that Houston actually, when teams have thrown, they lead the league in completion rate on throws 15 yards or further downfield, the lowest league completion rate. So they've been playing like umbrella coverage too. When teams do drop back to pass, they're not giving up any chunk plays, which is kind of what the Vikings offense is predicated on when they do throw. Listen, I was an Adam Thielen honk coming into the season, and I'm pretty scared at this point. One, the volume's not there. The emergence of Justin Jefferson, and through 3 games, like we've been bailed out on touchdowns. He had a really good fourth quarter against the Green Bay Packers, but he's done nothing outside of it. Outside of the other 11 quarters, he's done nothing. He caught a touchdown pass. He's got 8 targets, and then now if Justin Jefferson's going to pop, that hurts him as well. So I'm a little worried about Thielen. I know the rate stats all still favor him because they didn't throw it all the first 2 games and it was only to him. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him moving forward. Jefferson's, I love Jefferson coming in the draft. And one of the reasons I loved him is because everyone kept calling him a slot receiver. But if you go back to his year before, his 2018 season, he played exclusively outside and was still good. And people are like, oh, he can only play inside when he comes in the NFL. He's one of these guys that can only play big slot. And guess what? They played him at big slot the first 2 weeks. And then last year, he went completely outside and ran 78% of his routes outside. And they've moved Chad Beebe to the slot. And then he goes nuts. He had 6.5 yards per route last week. It was the most by any receiver in a game this season. They finally let him loose, and he won over the top. So I mean, that's where he can be that guy too. He's cheap enough to chase if you want in a stack, but I think I'm on your side. It just is too obvious based on what Houston is bad at, what Minnesota wants to do, and what Minnesota's bad at, which is, allowing 10.4 yards per target to opposing wide receivers and 14 completions of 20 plus yards, getting these hot shot play guys that are on the Houston side. It just seems too easy. So it'll probably go wrong.
Well, and I don't think this stack is necessarily going to be all that popular. There are just too many games out there with too many big names that haven't necessarily screwed people. Like anybody who's played Deshaun Watson this year, they've been disappointed. Anybody who's played Will Fuller, they have certainly been disappointed. So to me, when people can look like and play guys from Arizona and Carolina, from Cleveland and Dallas, New England, Kansas City, why am I going to mess with Will Fuller and Deshaun Watson? Like, I'm loving messing with. I mean, they've got a team total nearing 30. I mean, I don't know. Daigle, I think if I had to build one stack this week, if I was only allowed to stack one game, I think this would be it.
I mean, we were worried about them against the Steelers, but they were actually really good in that first half against the Steelers. The issue is they came out after the intermission, and I believe they went 3 and out on 3 of their last 4 possessions, just hit the wall with nothing else to do. And I am, it's not part of the stack, I know, but I think I kind of do like David Johnson. I do wish there were more touches, but you remember like week 1, he looked great, and he's just had bad defenses the past 2 weeks. So I still think I like him in this matchup. I know I hate myself for it too.
Yeah, I hate you too. Like it's, as long as we're on the same page. I just can't. That's a button. 5.6. I gotta admit, 5.6 is a little cheap for a home favorite and a 30-point, like with a 30-point team total. I gotta
hold your nose.
Yeah, I mean, this was not. I felt so good right up until like 30 seconds ago, and now Daigle's talking about David Johnson and stuff.
I do like Brandon Cooks a lot. I'll say that. They're using him like Will. They're using him like Will Fuller, and they're using Will Fuller like they used DeAndre Hopkins last year. Now, Will Fuller's strength, of course, is downfield. I imagine they get him more involved there. But right now, he's still the intermediate guy compared to Brandon Cooks, at least.
I'm not playing Brandon Cooks. I don't. Okay, I'll probably have a little Brandon Cooks, but I don't really want to mess with him. Wait, can we agree we're not playing Randall Cobb? We're not going to try and make Kenny Stills the thing again. Like, just those 2 guys. We don't have to worry about anybody else.
That's where the stack stops for me.
I'm in for playing both Fuller and Cooks, man. I think you can do it like last week we did at the Dallas, the Seattle side.
Hey, if you played them, like the Millionaire Maker winner had them both. It had Russ, it had Metcalf, and it had Lockett. Like, you can absolutely do that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a few teams that were that with Gallup too. They just had Kenny and Drake on them.
Oh, yeah, that did not. The Kenny and Drake owners are not feeling great right now. They have a hotel room with the Joe Mixon owners, and they all just sit around and cry together. It's not pretty. It's absolutely not pretty. Speaking of not pretty, well, go ahead.
I was just going to say the good news is you don't have to play Joe Mixon this week, so it's okay. We're all in the clear. Main slate only.
I traded away Joe Mixon. I'm done with him. I am over Joe Mixon. He can go fly a kite, as the kids say. All right, let's talk Buffalo at the Raiders. 52.5 point total. Buffalo 3-point favorites. on the road. And, Daigle, I'm going to start with you because we were having a conversation beforehand with our producer D-Train about nobody ever plays Josh Allen, and Josh Allen just keeps crushing it. Are you playing Josh Allen this week?
I might. I actually am more excited about this game than I am Seattle and Miami, just because I think both defenses here are slightly overrated. But Josh Allen, I mean, I know it's been 3 easier matchups, but we can honestly chalk him up to matchup proof. Maybe that changes whenever he plays the Patriots. But so far through 3 games, the QB3 every single week with the 4th most carries from the quarterback position. So the fact that he comes in underweight every single week, even last week, every single week, we talked about it on the show, not being scared too much about the Rams defense who was being overblown. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you play Josh Allen this week? I think he can match anyone else in this slate.
I mean, he's been rushing as every bit as much as we thought he would. Last week, and Reeves, you can kind of talk about this, with Zach Moss out, like we saw him get even more goal line work because they are never going to give Devin Singletary the ball on the goal line. They're just not going to do it, Reeves.
He had 2 chances and they did not work out.
Nah. And he's not going to get any more. Like that might be the last 2 of the year.
He still looked good, but yeah, it's there's a reason they got Zach Moss.
Yeah. 20-20, man. Like Singletary is one of those guys that if you play in a league that doesn't score touchdowns, you're doing just fine. But outside of that, it's
I started referring to Lance I almost called him that, but Josh Allen is Lance Arbor from Varsity Blues now. He when they get in, it's like they run the ball. And Singletary gets these yardage. When it's time to put the ball in the end zone, that's always Josh Allen's number, man.
So talk to me about Josh Allen. Are you playing him this week, Hribar? What do you think about him? And of course, Stefon Diggs. Everybody before the season, it was kind of wide receivers who switch teams. They usually don't fare very well. Meanwhile, Stefon Diggs, man. I mean, he's had over 15 points in 3 straight, 14.9 against the Rams. But I mean, he's been good. Like Stefon Diggs has been really good since coming over to Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills are a team that just objectively get it. I mean, look at everything they're doing right now. Josh Allen has used play action for 38.6% of his dropbacks, 3rd highest rate in the NFL through 3 weeks. He's a league-leading 6 touchdown passes off play action. Coming into this year, last year, he was just 23rd in play action rate. They are using him more effectively. They're using pre-snap motion at one of the highest rates in the league. They're using shotgun on almost all their snaps, using 4 wide receivers more than any team in the NFL. They just objectively get it. They understand what is working and how to, put Josh Allen in a place for him to be successful. And they don't care about him making a few negative plays per game because they put him in a spot to make so many good ones that they're able to withstand, some of those. When you try to have a guy like Josh Allen and you do something like what the Giants are doing with Daniel Jones, where you leave yourself no margin of error for a guy that can't, shake the shortcomings, then it blows up and kills you. The Bills have swerved into it, and they're like, we understand what we have in Josh Allen. We understand why we're going to go out and get build a receiving core that is built on separation instead of guys that are big clashers, guys that are going to rely on 50-50 balls and making tight window throws. Josh Allen is a guy that has to, he's not going to make a lot of anticipatory throws. He's made some more this year than he has in the past, but I mean, he's a guy that has to see a throw to make it. And they surrounded him with a bunch of guys that get open at will. And Stefon Diggs has been one of the most underrated players, since he entered the NFL and was underrated, as a prospect himself, and has done nothing but perform, regardless of what quarterback he's had, from Teddy Bridgewater to Case Keenum to Sam Bradford to Kirk Cousins and now Josh Allen. The guy is just a baller, and we're seeing it. I mean, he could have 3 touchdowns last week. I mean, I guess maybe 2 because it was back-to-back plays. 1 hit the ground, and then there was a holding penalty on 1 that came back, and then he finally got in later. But he's just a good player. Damon Arnett's not going to be able to check him. John Brown might not play in this game, so the Cole Beasley, like 6 for 100 last week, might kind of be in play again. We're not going to play him in DFS though. Gabriel Davis will probably get some more burn. But the best thing about Josh Allen is you don't even have to play him with anybody. Just like last week, you can always play him by himself because he's going to run for some. He's going to throw some to weird people. He's going to kind of get his own weight too. So you don't even have to play Diggs if you don't want to.
Tyler Kroft was the tight end 2 on the entire week. That tells you the Josh Allen experience in a nutshell.
Yeah. By the way, I'm definitely not chasing the Tyler Kroft point.
No, don't do that.
Yeah. But I mean, you look at, Zach Moss, he's expected to come back. I'm not playing Zach Moss. I'm not playing Devin Singletary. Bill's side is so simple. You play Josh Allen, you play Stefon Diggs, and that's it. And you don't have to play, you can play Diggs without Allen. Obviously, the question is, do we bring it back on the other side at all? Because last week, Daigle, I got to say, I did 1 team on Fanduel. I was the only guy in the in one of the bigger tournaments and had Andy Isabella. That felt great. I had Russ in
Ooh,
my
baby.
pocket. I was just doing so well. And then I had a 6% owned tight end named Darren Bleeping Waller, who just did absolutely nothing. And I finished like 15 or 16 out of first too. It's like the bagel from Darren Waller. And it was heartbreaking. And I'm sad, and I still don't know if I want to talk about it publicly. But Waller at 5.2K is too cheap. Like, he's coming back, right?
And coming off, a week that we know we can just throw out the window.
Yes.
Like, it was the optimal. Like, I understand you playing him in tournaments, but for like cash games, it was certainly the optimal week to just get away from him, given the target share before, knowing what the Patriots were going to do most likely. So that's why we throw that one out the window and we come right back with them. Having said that, I also like Josh Jacobs quite a bit because I think the Bills' run defense is slightly being overblown, like we talked about with the Rams defense last week. Dolphins backs, not named Jordan Howard, because Jordan Howard doesn't count since he only runs 1 yard carries, combined for 5.9 yards per attempt in week 2. And then Rams running backs combined for just under 5 yards per attempt on 27 carries just last week. And we know what's going to happen with Josh Jacobs. As long as he's healthy, he's going to get 25 to 28 carries and blow them up the middle. So I do think there's a sneaky spot to run out Josh Allen and then bring it right back with Josh Jacobs.
It's so weird because, typically – I'm not going to call Josh Allen a running back, but you don't want two guys running the ball against each other because, then, the game ends up just taking, it shortens the time because the clock keeps running. And I always try and avoid doing that. But I get what you're saying because the Raiders very clearly want to give Josh Jacobs the ball a ton. The Bills are going to run it with Josh Allen a lot. Outside of Jacobs and Waller, I mean, Reeves, there's really nobody on the Raiders.
Hunter Renfrow?
Yeah, there's one more.
No, we're not doing Hunter Renfrow.
I mean, go back to last year. Anytime this dude's been targeted, he's produced. And you've seen it last week when Waller got Belichicked and they had to throw him. I mean, he's beating guys downfield this week. He almost got a second touchdown. His knee went down at the 1 yard line. Go back to last year, man. Anytime they've thrown to him, anytime he's gotten targets, he's produced. It's fact, man.
Not gonna do
Listen, the internet exists. You can look it up.
Wait, hold on.
Look it up.
What?
And also the Bills, and this is going back to last year as well, they've kind of turned into like an interior funnel. The slot guys have given them a lot of trouble. And to start this year, it's happened again. I mean, they've allowed Jets slot receivers had 6 for 110 and a touchdown on 12 targets. Miami slot wideouts had 9 catches for 77 yards on 10 targets. Rams slot wideouts last week caught 11 of 12 targets for 120 yards. They give up interior production because no one wants to throw at Tre'Davious White. The guy's given up 1 touchdown since the start of last year, and it was to Mike Gesicki in week 2 when he was draped all over him. He just got bodied because he's just not big enough. They just pump target. When you face the Bills, you target them in the interior and you target slot guys. So it kind of lines up for him again. I mean, you can argue that Waller's just their slot guy, but they're all slot guys when Derek Carr's throwing the rock.
Tre'Davious White, I guess he didn't get credited giving up the touchdown last week. He absolutely gave up one last week to Cooper Kupp. He was trying to cover him. It was one of the ones that Kupp ran from the right side and just ran across the middle of the field, ended up over the left pylon. But Tre'Davious White just fell down. And I'm like, that's not what you do, Tre'Davious White, because he's one of the, I don't have very many cornerbacks that I just totally avoid, but he's one of them. And as somebody who was facing Cooper Kupp in a number of season-long leagues, I was not happy with old Trey White. With you, I'm not playing against Tre'Davious White. I guess you could play. No, I'm not playing Hunter Renfrow. I got to draw the line somewhere. I feel like Hunter Renfrow is a reasonable place to draw it. And I saw about when I threw it to Reeves, Daigle kind of gave this look about him. Daigle,
I knew where he was going. We played mini basketball games together. I know who to pass the rock to.
You're not playing Hunter Renfrow though, are you?
I mean, it's just what Reeves said. No. He's in a good spot. I don't know what to tell you. It's actually.
I mean, if you're stacking the game,
you're stacking the game. Yeah.
No one's telling you to jam him in.
And the best part is you're not going to play Derek Carr with them, so you just play Hunter Renfrow. It's not easy.
Derek Carr alone, buddy.
Didn't Derek Carr was in the Millie Maker, right? Yeah. He didn't have Hunter Renfrow too. That's surprising.
Yeah, he was airing out to Amari, Big Daddy Amari. That was the guy that done for me. But no, I understand he didn't have any Hunter Renfrows there for him, but I mean, come on, man. I know he had 20 last week. That's the absolute ceiling. Hunter Renfrow is not getting 20 again. Devin, make sure you save that clip for this time next week when we can go and play it back and I cry a little bit. But
so the good thing is, like, we assume he got those targets because Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards were out and got injured. And like, it doesn't look like they're going to play it all this week either. So although we can account more targets, push them towards Darren Waller, like Hunter Renfrow is still there to stay, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. Like, he's still going to be around.
Get another 15 targets this week.
Yeah, he could. He
really might. I don't know if I'm happy or sad that Henry Ruggs is not going to play this week, because I would find a way to talk myself into Ruggs. I know
not against Tre'Davious.
I know it'd be a brutal matchup, but I'd be like, man, if he just gets loose a couple times.
They're not even using him right. They just air him out for flags. That's it. They want him to get DPIs, and they don't use them for manufactured touchers like they should be doing.
I was stunned because before the year when I was researching the Raiders, that's the one thing I really thought. I said, they spent that high draft capital on him there. I thought they were going to go out of their way to make sure the ball was in his hands, and they just haven't done it. It's frustrating.
First half, for week 1, first half, it looked like
it was
like, and then he got the knee injury, and it hasn't been the same.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some quarterbacks, because as we talked about earlier in the show, like, there are a million different places you can go here. Arizona, Carolina, 51.5-point total. Jacksonville and Cincinnati, you want to hold your nose a little bit, 49-point total. Cleveland and Dallas, 56 total. New England, Kansas City, 52.5-point total. Reeves, typically we look for these quarterbacks and say that, there are only a few of these games that we really want to target. They're everywhere. We got 8 games with a total of 49 or better. I didn't even mention the Saints at Detroit, total of 54. Is there any one spot that stands out for you? Because I don't have that spot yet outside of Deshaun Watson. I kind of feel like I'm going to wait to see where the ownership lands and just go with a lone dude.
Yeah, there's a lot of spots. I do think the demise of Drew Brees has been greatly overstated. And I understand why it's kind of shifted that too. But like, the guy has averaged 8.2 and 8 yards per attempt. I know that's, yak induced from, Alvin Kamara, but it's essentially what he did last year as well. I mean, his depth of target is a yard different, but, he's going to get Michael Thomas back, potentially. The thing is about the Saints that Drew Brees is carrying this water for all them is their defense has been awful. It has been horrendous to start the season, and that game could shoot out. So I think, Drew Brees could be an interesting, getting Thomas back. Like I said, I touched on Lamar Jackson earlier, but Lamar Jackson now has made 25 career starts. This is the first time ever in his career he's had back-to-back weeks where he wasn't a QB1. He had his worst game of his career on Monday night, easily 3.5 yards per attempt. And they have a huge team total. They're huge favorites against Washington. And like, no one's going to want to play him because he was awful in prime time. And he's, a lot of people have the regression bug has already kind of caught people. I mean, if he's going to come, if we check back on Friday or Saturday night when I'm making lineups and I see his projections kind of looking at like low single digits, I mean, I'm just going to hold my breath and go way bonkers on it and go, because you don't have to play him with anybody too. He's another one of these guys. I can just play Lamar Jackson and then stack the other people I want. And then also, just real fast, not to eat up all the shot clock, Joe Burrow is still fun. It's been a QB1 the past few weeks. I don't think that there's any coincidence that Joe Burrow had his best game of the season when he finally stopped jamming targets into AJ Green in tight coverage. They went away from AJ Green. They went away from AJ Green last week, and you can say part of it was Darius Slay induced or whatever, but they finally just didn't jam targets AJ Green, and then the kid comes out and completes 70% of his passes, has highest yards per attempt. He has been 10th in the NFL, first in the NFL, and fourth in the NFL in dropbacks per week. And the Jaguars are dead last in EPA passing and as a pass defense. So I think Burrow is still an option as well.
Yeah, it feels weird seeing him price over $6K. Like, I was not expecting that. I mean, if you want to go to the other side, like, it's a great match for Gardner Minshew after he stunk up the bed last week. Like, he was throwing the ball pretty well. The problem is, on a slate like this where there are so many really good quarterbacks.
That's what Daigle said earlier, lead in. Like, you can play these guys and they can get you like a 20, but we've got guys dropping like 35s those opening 3 weeks.
The good thing about Burrow is, like, man, I really think he can. I mean, just to have 300 yards and multiple touchdowns in back-to-back games, and then weeks 1 and 2, he did have at least 7 carries in both games. Could not carry last week because he was getting stuffed behind the line every time you look up. But I mean, he has the rushing floor, so Burrow could get there, honestly. And he's in that price where he gets sandwiched between Fitzpatrick and then everyone's trying to pay up for. So he's going to come in like 1% owned.
Yeah, we saw the first 2 weeks that Burrow, he had a combined 15 carries for, 65 yards. I mean, this is a dude that can run. And like I don't think a lot of people necessarily know that about Joe Burrow, but the dude can run. He ran a little bit at LSU, like, and in this match against Jacksonville's defense is just it's a total train wreck. So I have no problem whatsoever playing Burrow this week. I think, man, it's just so hard to cross guys off the list. Like we haven't mentioned Dak.
Yeah.
Like Dak just keeps crushing it, and I mean he's going to be low on this week despite Cleveland, not being all that imposing of a matchup.
I do think this will be the one week where we'll see Dallas's pace kind of come down a little bit, though, because they won't probably be trailing like they have the last 2 weeks, and they've trailed in all 3 games. They've actually only had the lead for 7 snaps, the only ahead of the Jets and the Jaguars through 3 games. I think we all think objectively they're a better team than that, at least in the context of the entire NFL. And then the Browns, we know what they want to do. They don't want to get a shootout. They want to run their running backs. They want to run those backs. I think it will be a week where Dak doesn't drop back 40 plus times like he has, the last 2 weeks.
And I'm worried about that matchup for the Cowboys because it's no surprise that Dak's season low, 6.5 yards per attempt, came against the Rams when he was under pressure for 42% of his dropbacks. And the past 2 weeks, he's only been under pressure for 23% of his dropbacks. But now we have, remember, at the end of that game, they actually moved Zach Martin, the center, to right tackle because they're just so injured in their trenches. And now we have Myles Garrett, Olivier Vernon, and Adrian Claiborne coming to town. Like, I think the Browns just upset the Cowboys this week because the Cowboys are not ready for this game.
I love that's some heat right there, Daigle. Like we don't use the 4.5 point home favorite. That is a low line.
It's a game that fits the Browns well. Another quick one before we move on. I think it's a great spot for Cam Newton as well if you want to get off some of these other quarterbacks. Like the Ravens were forced to get away from what they do. Like even Lamar had 3 carries, 49 yards, and the first 2 possessions. The Ravens averaged 7.9 yards per carry in the first half, but then by the time they looked up, they were punched in the mouth and down by 3 scores. They had to keep dropping back and throwing. But we know the Chiefs defense, their weakness is still the rushing defense. So I think it's a great spot for Cam Newton. That one could shoot out as well.
I get it with Cam. I just can't click that button over the other guys.
That's fair.
I want to. And Reeves, you mentioned Lamar. I love the spot for Lamar. I love the spot for Deshaun. I think that's going to be, I usually play 3 quarterbacks every week. It's probably going to be Lamar, Watson, and Burrow. I feel like that's pretty reasonable. Though, who do you pair Burrow with? Like Reeves, I know you were talking about him earlier. Who the hell do you pair him with? Because
you don't have to. They're spreading they spread the ball around now. If they're going to do what they did last week, at least, where they get T. Higgins involved. Auden Tate had 3 end zone targets. They don't have to just rely on Green. They've got Tyler Boyd. I mean, if they use that, that's the way to successfully use him, like he did at LSU. You let him just pepper people. That's what we'd like to see.
That's why they're leading the league in 11 personnel. I mean, they're just rolling out receivers. That's why they only scratch 1 every single week and also bring Alex Erickson in for a few routes because that's the personnel they continue using no matter what. Also why people are pissed off at Joe Mixon.
As a football show in 2020, we are contractually obligated to also mention Kyler Murray, who we have not mentioned yet.
Right.
Yeah, that's just how it works. And
we don't have to mention Trubisky, though. That's the good thing.
Nope.
We're done with that.
Nick Foles season, here we go.
Nope.
And imagine if Rodgers. Imagine if that game was on the slate, man. Imagine if that was main slate.
How are you doing now that you don't have Trubisky to light money on fire with anymore?
We got Fitzpatrick. It's okay. We're doing just fine.
Oh, boy. All right, let's talk about some running backs. Obviously, a lot of guys are going to be popular. One of them might be Kenyon Drake. I've seen him with some increased ownership. I'm not sure who to throw this to because I know you both equally hate Kenyon Drake right now. So,
I'm playing him still. I don't care.
I think I might play him too. Yeah.
I've dug in. I'm riding this until I get the one good game. It doesn't matter how much money I lose in the process. And then, listen, I am also obligated to just play running backs against Carolina. I have to do it. It's been disappointing so far. And I don't think Drake has particularly even looked good. He hasn't looked like he's had a real lot of sizzle so far to him, even last week when he had some lanes. But I'm going to play running backs against Carolina. They've allowed at least 1 rushing touchdown. They did break the streak of allowing 2 touchdowns, rushing touchdowns after 7 straight games, but they still did allow 1. And it's been 16 straight games they've allowed a rushing touchdown. They've allowed a top 3 PPR scorer in all 3 games this year. So, this is it for me. I'm going one more time now.
Shut up. You're going to go more than one more time. I know you. You're just gonna keep piling on, man. Obviously Alvin Kamara is gonna be really popular.
Oh yeah.
Daigle, if Michael Thomas is in, do you think we should be taking an underweight stance on Kamara? Because I think that's really interesting.
I don't think so. I mean, I understand the 36% target share the past 2 games without Thomas would certainly help if Thomas is out. But I mean, just from film, like Kamara has looked better than ever. And given the matchup against, like, remember, the Lions defense was the reason we played Kenyon Drake. And of course, he didn't get targeted, so we didn't get there. But we are still attacking this defense. So I would still be fine being overweight or matching the field on Kamara for sure.
I assume that if you think that the Cowboys lose, you're not going to be heavily invested in Zeke. He's going to be popular. There are a lot of running backs, kind of this like high 5K, low to mid 6K range that are in really good spots. I think Darrell Henderson's a little bit interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I think Hribar just like hit the bottom of the table, man. Talk to me about Henderson.
Well, I mean, I always like to look at the like industry ranks and then to compare them to my ranks. I always like to just see like who's like what's the crowd, feel the crowd out. And the industry seems pretty like not all in on Darrell Henderson. Like they've got him like around like 23 RB24. He's been a top 12 back the past 2 weeks. He's a huge home favorite. Last week with Malcolm Brown, he outtouched him 21-7, and that was a game where they ran into real negative game script right away, and then they fought back, and it was still Darrell Henderson, and he looks great. It looks like his brain is caught up to like the processing speed of the guy he was coming out. What we thought coming out of Memphis, the guy was an electric runner, and just wasn't that as a rookie. He leads all players in 20 or more snaps in opportunity rate per snap at 60.3%. The Giants allowed 133, 156, and 171 yards from scrimmage to opposing backfield to start the season. I mean, I just see huge home favorite, guy getting 20 touches, guy that's been productive on the most run heaviest team in the NFL.
Does Cam Akers returning, if he returns, does that slow you down a little?
I think he's trending towards doubtful again now already.
If Akers misses, like, I'm sorry, like there's no way they can run Malcolm Brown in this spot. I mean, it's Henderson's role. And like you said,
I think so. And like I said, and I don't know if we get there by the end of the week, maybe it'll change. But looking at where the industry has him right now, I mean, they seem to not only have one foot in.
Fine with me. Daigle, who else are you looking at the running back position?
I also like Nick Chubb for the reasons we mentioned, but also Kareem Hunt was a DMP on Wednesday. And they ominously, perhaps, promoted Dontrell Hilliard, former AAF superstar that I made Reeves watch one game before, even though Dearness Johnson has only played 6 snaps all year. So that seems kind of odd. So I think we should have Nick Chubb on our radar, who's actually run more routes than Kareem Hunt this season. He just hasn't gotten the targets.
Are we playing David Montgomery? I mean, there's no Tariq Cohen there. Like, I don't know what to do with this Bears team right now. I feel like you could reasonably just totally ignore this game. There are a couple games you can just write off. I think this is one of those. But Montgomery at 5.5, I mean, if he's going to get 20 touches, like, I don't hate it.
If he's going to get 20 touches, I mean, maybe Reeb has a different spin on this, but like the Colts aren't a joke. The past 2 weeks, people will blame on the blowout, but in even the advanced metrics that account for opponents like EPA and success rate, like they're the number 1 defense across the entire board. And now they get Nick Foles. Like, I just don't want to touch that offense this week. Not even Allen Robinson. I don't want any part of it.
They had DeForest Buckner. They've been good, kind of all over. It's a tough. I mean, it is nice that now that Cohen's out of the picture, because that was kind of the ceiling thorn that Montgomery already had. I mean, he's averaging 14 carries per game, 17th in the position, but was 33rd in catches per game. Cohen was running a route on 46% of the Bears dropbacks. So, I mean, if we can get him into the 50% range, 60% range, that's like top 10 usage for a running back. I know it's not an electric type of usage, but I mean, volume is volume. Bears are the only team without a rushing touchdown through 3 weeks. Eventually someone's got to fall into the end zone. I don't know. So he's not going to make my pool just because I like so many guys this week. But I mean, I can see someone talking themselves into it.
We should mention Mike Davis as well. He's priced down in a 5.7K over on DK. He saw 9 targets last week, 13 carries. I mean, this is at this point, I don't know what the difference between Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake is.
Well,
Wait.
one guy's catching passes.
Yeah, but say one guy is.
I'm saying Mike Davis is what Kenyon Drake was supposed to be doing.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fair. I was about to say. Yeah. Mike Davis is like Mike Gesicki of running backs. Like he's just out of position, basically. And yeah, he is clearly their number one back. He just became Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. So if like Mike Davis, I don't think he's going to be too popular. Like I said, there are a number of different plays this week, different ways you can go. And Mike Davis is certainly on my radar. Wide receivers, Daigle, I'll start off with you, brother. Who you got?
I'm hoping to come to y'all for wide receivers. I have one, but I kind of struggled here just because I don't like a lot of guys. Maybe I should get higher on players. I like a lot of running backs this week. I'm just going to go back to CeeDee Lamb. I'll say that because I think that was an injury he dealt with in running or playing his season low amount of snaps. And then I believe running fewer routes than Cedric Wilson. And I know what Mike McCarthy said, that the rookie workload caught up to him, but I'm not buying that. And so I'm just going to say I'm going to go right back to him.
Stop it with the rookie workload stuff.
That's what he said. I'm just telling you.
After that punt return, he got banged up on. He played 16 of 39 snaps after that. So I definitely think he got banged up on that play as well. And the Cowboys actually used, they went 10 personnel on 13 plays last week. It was like the first time they did that. That's how Cedric Wilson got some burn on top of both Cooper and Lamb getting nicked up as well. I think you can just look at the top.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to ask, is Marshawn Lattimore expected to shadow Galladay?
Maybe. I don't know.
I got to look that up. I'm going to look that up while you talk, Reeves.
I mean, if you want to stack that game, though, I mean, you're going to run it back with that, too. I think that game is fun. I mean, Michael Thomas, if he plays, like, people might be hesitant to use him. Jeffrey Okudah has not looked great to start off. I mean, and granted, he's a rookie cornerback. You throw these rookie cornerbacks on Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, welcome to the NFL. Welcome to the NFL, buddy. He allowed 7 catches for 121 yards in his first game in coverage. He did have the interception last week, but also allowed 5 of 6 targets to be completed for 79 yards in his coverage. So he struggled. He can get another tough draw here if Thomas plays, even if it's Emmanuel Sanders. Maybe that's even sneaky just because he struggled. I mean, and you should expect guys to struggle. They're starting out in the NFL and you throw them on these guys. Like Daigle brought up with Noah Igbani or whatever his name is.
That's why I stick with Noah buddy. That's why I do it.
When you throw him on an island, and they did him no favors in that week 2 game, but they did better in week 3, not having him just shadow guys. We got Mike Evans, with Godwin out last time that happened. He had 29% of the team targets. Looks like Mike Williams is going to be out. So, I mean, they really only have, talk about concentrated target trees. Like the Chargers are only going to throw the ball to 3 players. It's going to be Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, and Austin Eckler. And they're not going to be able to run the ball in that game. And it looks like Sean Murphy-Bunting is going to be out there slot corner for Tampa Bay as well. So, I mean, Keenan Allen could get just jammed to targets again.
Keenan Allen has led the entire league in target share the past 2 weeks from Justin Herbert as well.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Herbert, he had 19 targets last week. I understand that they've got a team total of 18 points, and everybody's going to say, "Well, I don't want to play him in that matchup. I don't want to play him in that in their big." If I give you 19 targets, I would play you.
I'm trying to think if I would play me.
You absolutely would play you.
I'd need 24 targets from Daigle.
We need to bump up that target share. Another thing on Noah by the way, covering DK Metcalf this week is that those numbers would be even worse in coverage if Chris Conley wasn't the worst receiver I've ever seen in my life. Chris Conley put on film the worst tape of anyone so far in 2020.
It was rough, man.
People want Chris Conley. This is we're going on 3 years now where people just really want Chris Conley to happen.
I had him captain too. What the hell?
I had that tweet before the game that said, "Don't forget about him leading the team in targets," and he did. And people said, "Well, you said." People were like, "So what happened?" I was like, "Well, he led the team in targets. I said he'd be good targets."
That's what happens.
I didn't say anything about the quality of targets.
Well, hey, if you want to stick with that same team, if DJ Shark comes back, eventually it's going to happen for him, right?
No.
Okay. Well, there we go.
Maybe.
Right. I still don't know.
I mean, just go back into last year, look at DJ Shark's last 12 games, and he's turns into a harder sell, by the minute.
Well, whatever.
It's just a different offense this year. It
is.
I'm actually surprised the offense tanked without him. Maybe it wasn't because of him, but they're just spreading it out now. It's more of a first read offense. It's not a let's put DJ Shark in position of strength. Kind of how the Titans use their receivers.
That's not going to work for me. Titans aren't going to use any receivers this week. It's I don't know. We'll see.
They're playing. They're going to play.
I know. They're going to play Tuesday, and everybody's going to be mad about some waiver stuff in season long. And
I need them to not play Tuesday because that's when I write the worksheet, and I just need to not. It's just going to throw everything in whack.
And I need them not to play Tuesday because one of my highest week-to-week bets is with somebody who has Derrick Henry. So selfishly, I'm rooting on this game not to play, though I'm with you. I think it's going to play Monday or Tuesday. All right, we got to jump off here. Reeves, we talked about a bunch of game stacks today. We talked about how there are 8 different games, totals 49 or better. Is there any one stack that really stands out for you that you want to be targeting this week?
No, I still need to dip in. We covered all the ones. I mean, like I said, it's hard to just get away from Seattle, Miami, just because let's chase the points. I like the Houston one a lot, like we nailed, and then something about the Saints still, like if they're not going to be super high owned. I mean, I know we know Kamara is, but I think Breeze and Thomas might not be either too. And if Thomas comes back, I think you can play all 3 of those guys because I think they'll just give the ball to the guys they always want to give the ball to.
Daigle, does any game stand out for you as far as the game stack goes?
I mean, I like the Bengals. It's just tough to know who to run it back with because you also don't really want to run it back with James Robinson.
This game might end up with 60 points and nobody gets there.
I'll say Lamar and Logan Thomas, and hopefully every ball doesn't sail over Logan Thomas's head.
Did you see Logan Thomas? Crain is as fast as Logan Thomas. It's like
I'm like low key quick now. What are you talking?
It's about? The first player.
Logan Thomas looks awful. I know people keep talking about how much he's on the field getting exercise, and man, he looks terrible. He needs more exercise because he is slow.
Well, on that note, we're going to get off here because Crain needs some exercise too. It's been fun as always. This has been the DFS Pick 6 for Week 4 of the NFL season. Daigle, Reeves, thanks for joining me. I'm Eric. We'll catch y'all later. Peace.